But the truth is, African people, no matter where you live, are some dope ass people. We are the originators of everything that is cool. We are the originators of your very existence. We gave you culture, but you are not part of the Black experience nor race. Bonsoir, bonjour, bon après-midi tout le monde. My name is Olina and welcome to the channel formerly known as The Frustrated Haitian. This might go over people's heads, but let's try. My race, which is a social construct, is Black. My ethnicity, which is also my culture, is Haitian. My nationality, meaning the country I belong to, the country I was born in, is the United States of America. Every single day as I walk through this world, I am Haitian, I am African, I am a Black woman, I am a U.S. American, I am Caribbean, I am Latin American, I am West Indian. If you do not understand how that is possible, I don't know what to tell you. So let me start off by saying Latin is white people. Latin America could be anyone in America, which is a continent that speaks a Romance language, which is Latin is a Romance language. So that's French, Portuguese, and Spanish. So yes, when you call people from Colombia, Peru, Bolivia, I'm being very selective, although all of them are Latin American countries, but I'm being very selective. Latin, they're not Latin, they're Latin America. Latin America needs to align with that. To be Latin American is no different than being Anglo-American. Anglo-American, or also refers to as Anglo-Saxon American, most often designates to a region in the Americas in which English is the main language. And the British culture and British Empire have had significant historic, ethnic, linguistic, and cultural impact. Anglo-America is distinct from Latin America, a region in the Americas where Romance languages, Spanish, Portuguese, and French are prevalent. Just recently, Fat Joe did an interview with Hot 97, I think it was. And he sat there and he said, he didn't say all, he said Latinos are black, right? So when he said Latinos are black and didn't specify and say some Latinos are black, a good majority of Latinos are black. When he said Latinos are black, so many people go rush and go on the internet and so excited. I told you I was black. My thing is that in your heart, do you think that there's something wrong with being black? You guys use the term black like it's an insult and not something to be proud of. You guys give away the black race card around like it's not something to be proud of.
You said once you said my
skin is
not.
But
she's Spanish.
But here's the thing. But people don't.
No.
Want
She's
to be
Spanish. She's not even white.
But people don't want to.
No. Her skin. Look.
But listen. What color?
Are you Spanish?
I'm sorry. What color is Fat Joe?
Are you Spanish?
I'm Puerto Rican and Italian.
Then you black. Period. I don't care.
I'm not black. I'm not black.
White people. First of all, Italians are almost not even white. To be honest, Italians, really are. They almost black white people.
You guys give away the black race card around like it's not something to be proud of.
Let's speak about Latinos not being black. Latinos are black. In Cuba at one time there was 8 million Cubans. 5 million unfortunately were slaves. 3 million were actual Cubans. And they integrated and had babies. Same thing with Puerto Rico when you go to Loíza.
Some Latinos are black. Latino is not a race, it's not an ethnicity, it's not a nationality. It speaks on language and that's it. The truth is, Fat Joe needs an education. This is why the British talks about us. The United States has done a number to our education.
To be Latin American means that you come from a country in America that speaks a Romance language. America is a continent, not a country.
You gonna get this work. The name of this country and your nationality has always been the United States of America. Check your passport.
So Cuba is the original name of the island before Christopher Columbus didn't find shit. If Fat Joe is saying there were 8 million people on the island of Cuba, which is the biggest Caribbean island, 8 million, 5 plus 3 is 8. Where are the Europeans? History tells it that most Native American people were eradicated. There's no arguing that. They were eradicated because of enslavement, because of disease, because of abuse, because of murder. These people, pretty much, their numbers went down to nothing in Cuba.
Please understand that the slave trade was real, rape was real, and migration was real. At one point, the Spaniards kidnapped the native people of Mexico because they needed more people or more slaves after eradicating the native people of Cuba. That's before they started importing Africans to the Caribbean island. Let's talk numbers because numbers are important. And I'm specifically doing this to be petty because I personally feel that conversations like this should never happen unless you have an expert to really challenge what is being said. Ebro from Ebro in the Morning is not an expert. Ebro obviously knows nothing about Latin American history, and even Fat Joe, with him being Puerto Rican, I think it is, does not know. But don't get it misconstrued. Fat Joe is a white man with a little bit of flavor, but we'll talk about that a little bit later in the video. In 1953, Cuba had 5.8 million people.
In Cuba at one time there was 8 million Cubans. 5 million, unfortunately, were slaves. 3 million were actual Cubans.
In 1970, Cuba had 8.7 million people. Today, Cuba has 11.3 million people.
In Cuba at one time there was 8 million Cubans. 5 million, unfortunately, were slaves. 3 million were actual Cubans.
So where is he getting in the 1700s and in the 1800s? Cuba had 5 million African slaves and 3 million actual Cubans. But then again, like I said, I don't like conversations like this unless you have an expert to actually challenge the information.
So actual Cubans would be Native American.
Please remember that the United States has done a number to our education system. Most people that call themselves Latino don't even know what it means or understand the etymology of the word. The word Latino is a U.S. American term, meaning it became popular in the United States. Most people living in Latin America has never heard the term because the true term is Latin America or Latin American. However, through music, through internet, there is an indoctrination. Now let's talk about a specific part of history that no one talks about when it comes to Cuba. In the 18th and 19th century, Cuba was dependent on an economy based on sugar, cane, and coffee crops, and on slaves imported from Africa to work on sugar and coffee plantation. It is estimated that over 600,000 Africans were taken from West Africa and shipped to Cuba over 3 centuries. That's 300 years, people. With tens of thousands dying during the brutal Atlantic crossing. Most of these people were brought to Cuba between 1780s and 1860s. as the slave population rose from 39,000 to 400,000, despite the fact that the United States slave trade to Cuba was illegal after 1794. Now, again, where does Fat Joe get his numbers from? U.S. traders, including the DeWolf family, frequently made slave voyages to Havana and profited from their own Cuban plantation. At the peak of the slave-based economy, enslaved people comprised nearly 1/3 of the Cuban population. There were a number of anti-slave movements in the early 1800s, but those were violently suppressed and leaders of those revolts were executed. Although Britain and the USA abolished their slave trade in 1807 and 1808, and Britain pressured Spain into formally ending the trade to Cuba in the 1820s, Cuba remained one of the most common destinations for slave ships through the 1860s. Slavery itself was not abolished in Cuba until 1886. I would not be mentioning the Haitian Cubans of 1791 to 1804. If you want me to do a video about this, leave a comment below. But we will talk about the Chinese Cubans. Let's get into it. Slavery in Cuba was particularly profitable for its slave owners after the Haitian Revolution, which is 1804. The newly independent state of Haiti retreated from the global sugar market as its residents chose to focus on subsistence farming, which is substance farming. Cuba took its place as the largest sugar producer. By the mid-19th century, due to the British pressure to abolish slavery, plantation owners transported more than 100,000 Chinese workers to the island. They were held in conditions not very different from those of African slaves. On June 3rd, 1857, the first ship arrived in Cuba carrying about 200 Chinese laborers on 8-year contracts. In many cases, these Chinese coolies were treated just as African slaves were. The situation was so severe that the Imperial Chinese government even sent investigators to Cuba in 1873 to look into a large number of suicides by Chinese laborers in Cuba, as well as allegations of abuse and breach of contract by plantation owners. Shortly after, the Chinese labor trade was prohibited, and the last ship carrying Chinese laborers reached Cuba in 1874. Many of these laborers intermarried with the local population of Cubans, Africans, and mixed race women. Miscegenation laws forbade them to marry Spaniards. These Cuban Chinese began to develop a distinct community. At its height in the late 1870s, there were more than 40,000 Chinese in Cuba.
So do not go through the process of romanticizing what actually happened when it came to slavery. They were raped, they were murdered, they were pillaged, they were hung. Men and women. Women were forced to have babies that they did not want to have. And sometimes, most times, the children will be taken away from the mother. So Fat Joe's depiction of history, like, where the fuck that come from? Latinos can be anything. And traditionally, Latinos are Native Americans, indigenous people to this land that we are in. They are African people and they're European people.
Latin America is a melting pot. Let's not forget the Lebanese and Syrian people of Latin America. They're in Haiti. Oh boy, are they in Haiti. They're in Dominican Republic, Cuba, Puerto Rico, Colombia, Venezuela, Ecuador, Mexico. You only know this information if you truly know Latin American history. Fat Joe has exploited black culture for his gain. So his depiction of history is to justify the usage of the N-word. But the truth is, he doesn't know enough about Latin American or even black history to give a history lesson.
I don't care, man, because can't nobody tell me, like, they know how I mean it. And my whole theory about it is, I'm Latino, I can't say nigga. Blacks and Latinos is the same shit if you go back in history.
But the truth is, African people, no matter where you live, are some dope ass people. We are the originators of everything that is cool. We are the originators of your very existence. We gave you culture, but you are not part of the black experience nor race.
Do you feel like you helped at all in putting Kyle's on the mid-app?
Big facts, no cap. Is that if you got to look at the before and after, you know what I'm saying? She always had a platform and she was always destined to be what she was going to be regardless. But when I stepped in and there was a lot of codes being taught, it was like, you can do this, you should start this, you should start doing your hair like this, or you should do this. You should adapt because you need black people to fuck with you because you need black people to fuck with you because you need black people to fuck with you because you need black people to fuck with you because you need culture. 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 This, if you ain't got black people behind you, you ain't got nothing. This, if you ain't got black people behind you, you ain't got nothing. This, if you ain't got black people behind you, you ain't got nothing. Ain't nobody gonna listen. You can't influence nobody.
Este está loco.
Do me a favor, name one hit by Fat Joe, a top 10 that is, that was not backed by a black R&B singer or black rapper. I looked and I couldn't find it. One thing people need to understand, and also too many African Americans do not realize, is that a major, or better yet, majority of Fat Joe's DNA is colonizer, no matter how he is living today. But I'll give you a joke at the end of the video. However, I'm not going to sit around and wait for him to supply a DNA test. So when he says he doesn't care, that touches home for many people. I'll quote Vanessa M. Marco and her BET article. She said it the best. His careless blanketed statement that Latinos are black is rooted in the assumption that Latinos are a monolith. Erasing the unique struggles of black Latinos, it waters down the plight of those who are never greeted as black while also being Latino, and insinuating that white Latinos share the same hardships and experiences as their black Latino counterparts. Unquote. However, Fat Joe is a European or mixed European. The places he came from and the places his parents come from are very black influenced. However, African people have influenced the world. But as a Haitian that also was born in Miami, that is also black, the discrimination in Miami is real. So this bullshit that Fat Joe and Veronica Vega is over here feeding people is on the level of fuck that shit. There's levels to it. So it doesn't matter if you are a black Cuban, doesn't matter if you are a black Haitian, a black Venezuelan, a black Puerto Rican, a black Panamanian. The discrimination in Miami is real.
I just wanted to know, what ethnicity do you identify as?
I'm black.
As black?
I am black. I'm absolutely black.
Remember in the beginning of the video where I said, my race is black, my ethnicity is Haitian, and my nationality is United States of America? Okay then, Veronica Vega could have all around dodged this bullet and said Cuban, Venezuelan. But she said black. Black is a race, it's not an ethnicity. No matter what someone has told you. But we'll talk about that in another video. I will be doing a video on Veronica Vega and her fuckery when it comes to love and hip hop. And I will do a video all about Diana as well. Oh yeah, Amara La Negra is Diana, by the way.
So be on the lookout for that. Veronica Vega needs to stop the bullshit. It's cool to be black. And you only want to be black because it's cool. But you're not.
Well, I'm Latina. And Latino Americans have a really interesting identity because, especially for me as a Puerto Rican woman, my identity is the descendant of many different identities. I am the descendant of African slaves. I am a descendant of indigenous peoples. I'm a descendant of Spanish colonizers. I am a descendant of all sorts of folks. That doesn't mean I'm black. That doesn't mean I'm, native. But it does mean that I can use that as I can tell the story of my ancestors. That doesn't mean that I am that.
The word Latino is generally used to denote people living in the United States. So much so, outside the United States, we don't speak Latinos. We speak Mexicans, Cubans, Puerto Ricans, and so forth. In Latin America, the term Latino is not common. It is restricted to Latin American people of the United States. I ran into this article today on BET.com. The writer is Vanessa M. Marco, and she says Fat Joe was out here looking for validation from the African American community, unquote. Now, these are my words. I truly feel that he attempted to echo the constant ignorance I hear online about Latinos being black, to satisfy the African American community and secure his ability to use the N-word while not knowing anything about Latin America, which is a shame. The truth is, Fat Joe hasn't done anything but made it harder for the Afro Hispanics. Because if we're talking about the Spanish speaking community, only it's Afro Hispanic. Some Latinos are black.
Let go.